All right. Our speaker today is Ruth Buckels of YSS, and she will be talking to us on human trafficking. So,
Okay, and
go ahead.
I am going to start. So I want to wait till you tell me that you can see on the screen.
Yep.
Green screen. Okay. All right. So I've got, and that just helps people that are visual learners as well as listeners. So I always have it on there. It kind of guides me through to make sure I don't miss any of the highlighted points. So while I am going through, let me move that so that my clicker works. All right. I want to talk a little bit about human trafficking. And granted, I give 2-hour presentations, 3-hour presentations. I have been training on human trafficking since 2009. I was pulled into this lifestyle of training about human trafficking as I am a licensed foster parent for over 30 years. And many of our kids, especially, the young adults, have been trafficked in the state of Iowa, and we hide them in our child welfare and our juvenile justice systems to get them away from the pimps and the buyers that are using them in their communities. And so as a foster parent, I have had multiple of these children placed with me. I have adopted 8 of them into my family. I've adopted 18 total, all teenagers, because I only really like teenagers, to make sure that they had a name change and safety and a family to fall back on to help them start their lives, because human trafficking isn't the best way to start your life. So I want to talk a little bit about what this issue is. Human trafficking is business. It's a business model. So anybody who can understand setting up a business can understand how easy it is to set up human trafficking. Basically, the human body is the product that you make money from, and you can sell yourself, and you get the goods and services, and that is called prostitution. Or you can market somebody else and you get the goods and services. They might get a few goods and services, but not all of them. And then you have human trafficking. So human trafficking is a 3-party event. You have a buyer, you have a seller or a marketer or a pimp, whatever word you want to put on it. And then you have, of course, the product, which is the victim or the person being purchased. Okay. Now, there's not a lot of prostitution in Iowa. So anytime people use that word, I look at them suspiciously because I know they don't understand what human trafficking is. If you think about human trafficking as a business, how many pimps are going to want somebody to move into their town or their community and sell themselves without giving a cut, a protection cut, or whatever of the money or the goods or the services to the pimp? Iowa is a huge human trafficking area, and human trafficking is in not only the cities, but it's almost more prevalent in the rural communities because it's so easy to get the kids involved. People are much more trusting. People are less likely to guard their children in all of the locations they need to be guarding their children. And so human trafficking is hidden in plain sight. It is not what Hollywood presents. It is where, people are driving around in vans and stealing people off the streets. That's not true. Iowans do not like it when people get stolen or taken. And pimps know that because pimps are also Iowans. Sometimes they're 3rd generation, 4th generation pimps, 5th generations. This has been their family's way to make money since slavery days in the 17 and 1800s. This is their thing. And they typically have other businesses to cover how the money looks like it's being made. So maybe they're a farmer and they look really, really super wealthy, but when hog prices are down, cattle prices are down, sheep prices are down, they're probably not making those kind of money off of the product of animals. So they're supplementing their income and hiding it in the farm by selling people. It's very simple to set up. The youngest pimp I've gotten to work with was 12 years old. He was pimping out the kids in his mother's daycare. The oldest pimp that I've gotten to interview was in his 80s. And he bragged very, very clearly about he was a 4th generation pimp, and he was a member of the KKK. He had all of these viewpoints. He was a business owner. He was a farmer. He was a member of a church, a deacon in a church, actually. I mean, he was very, very, very well networked, and he claimed that he was trafficking people in about half of our 99 counties. Okay. Buyers are risk takers. When you stop and you think about a buyer, if this is what you have at home, this is what you buy. So the buyers are looking for the experience. They're looking for the seduction. They're looking for the game. They're looking for the risk factor that's involved. And, it's about the seduction. It's about the illusion of what's going on. So buyers, not that I will ever feel sorry for them, but buyers get trapped into buying just like victims get trapped into being sold over and over and over again. Basically, if the pimp can get the victim to show up someplace, get photographs of that person, they will blackmail that person into showing up again and again and again. The people that are being sold are all body shapes and sizes. They're not all little models. They're all ages. The youngest victim I've worked with was 3 months old when we pulled her out of being bought and sold every day. And the oldest victim was in their 80s, okay, that we've pulled out. Every body shape and size. I have had people that, are obviously infants, and I have had people that are pushing 500 pounds. Every race, every religion, every socioeconomic level, every education, because the buyer, it might not be just about the sex. It might be about that illusion. I want somebody who can have a conversation with me about science or about business or about, whatever. They want somebody they can perceive they're in a relationship with, so they'll come back and buy again and again and again. And that's how the industry makes its money. If a buyer decides they no longer want to buy, the pimp usually blackmails them and says, hey, if you don't keep buying, I'm going to expose you to your community. I'm going to expose you to your newspaper. I'm going to tell your boss. I'm going to tell your family. I'm going to tell your spouse, etc. So buyers get blackmailed just like the victims getting blackmailed. Okay. This whole industry is bait and switch. It's set up on lies. There is nothing truthful about it. So you got to stop and think about, what do I need to do to lie to you, to manipulate you? I sure wouldn't use my real name. I sure wouldn't use, my real locations or anything like that. If my whole job is to make sure you never know the real me, then you can never testify against me because everything you say is a lie. You can never expose me because you don't really know who I am or where I am, what I live, how I live, how I make my money. So everything is all based on all of these illusions, which is why when you say, call the police, call the police, call the police have 2 jobs: to verify and validate. And if you can't verify it and you can't validate it because this victim knows their pimp by the name of Sam, and this victim knows their pimp's name is Jack, and this victim knows their pimp's name is Marshall, okay? They're all talking about the same pimp. They're all describing, but they got 3 different names. And so when they go to a police department or they go to an officer, they go to a hero and they say, help, 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 help. People aren't able to put the stories together because the locations change. And a good pimp is going to make sure they live in one community. Maybe they're a traveling salesperson. And so they have a house, because Iowa has cheap real estate. They have a house in multiple communities around Iowa that they're here for 2 or 3 weeks. And maybe they've got wife and children in this location and they're over there. And it looks like they have a wife and a child or 2 over there, but they're not married to them. And in this location and in that location. These kids and these wives and these husbands, these people aren't missing from their lives. They're not taken and stolen. They live in those communities. They're bought and sold in those communities. And it's all based on some kind of language that is set up within the pimp. So maybe it's different colors that they wear. Think gangs, okay? Different colors that they wear, different messages that they send, different words that they use, different forms of money. So a penny might mean this, and a dime might mean that, and a quarter might mean this, and a $50 means this other thing. But if that's the language, kind of like the code, then they're communicating very well without ever saying a word. And that's very, very, very common. The average weekly salary of somebody in the life that's pimping is about 32,000. So people that think this is, wow, they can't afford good drugs, or they can't afford real estate, they can't afford businesses, are wrong. These are wealthy individuals, typically, unless they're doing family trafficking. Family trafficking is where, you know, the parent sells the children. Okay. Those tend to be lower income families because they're trying to pay their rent or their bills. But once you move up in the industry or up in the life, you're moving into big money business. You know, think about the Playboy Mansion. That is all about human trafficking. And it drops all the way down in people in their business model. So people that think that porn is innocent don't understand it's part of the business model. It's just one more section of the business. A good business has many diversifications. So does human trafficking. So they might diversify into porn. They might diversify into the baby market, like getting people pregnant and then selling their babies. They might diversify into selling sperm, selling eggs, selling body parts, like a testicle is worth 35,000. They might sell time. They might sell people. They might sell experiences. Do you see what I mean? You can sell a lot of things. Then you have, because you've got a cash flow there, you have to launder that money through something. So then they buy places, or they run places like tattoo parlors, massage parlors, restaurants, places that have a lot of cash flow that they can start inserting that money into to cover it up. So it is, human trafficking is everywhere that people are. Traffickers, this is kind of a snapshot of traffickers. Anything that makes the trafficker money is good. Anything that costs the trafficker money is bad. And that's how they operate. They typically lure, you know, people into the industry by making all kinds of promises of money and resources and all of that. I'll pay for your college education. I'll help you get a scholarship. I will talk to your coach and make sure you get to play more on the basketball team or the soccer team or the whatever team. I will be your biggest friend and your best advocate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. When really that's just one more way that they're controlling or putting the thumb down on that person that they own. A good pimp, like there is such a thing, but a good pimp will have every kind of person in their stable. Okay. That does not mean every person is sold all the time, because like I said, in Iowa, we want our kids to be part of, hold on just a second while I turn that off. We want our kids they go to school every day, they do all the things that child is supposed to do. But when they're not busy, typically in the middle of the night, they're being forced or blackmailed or coerced or frauded into sneaking out, into using drugs, into taking risks, et cetera, because they don't dare tell a pimp no. If you tell a pimp no, then you have the consequence, et cetera. So we have all of these teenagers with all of this mental health. And I think, is it really mental health, or who's manipulating them? Who's hurting them? Who's forcing them? Who's not guarding them and protecting them, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it's easier to look like you are a risk taker or you are breaking the rules than it is to be honest about the fact that somebody's blackmailing you into doing what you don't want to do. I have boys and girls in drug treatment that say they love going to drug treatment because when they're in drug treatment, nobody's forcing them to use drugs. You know, they don't perceive they're addicts because they're not choosing to take them. Somebody is administering drugs to them so they can do specific activities, that they could not make themselves do without being drugged. So we've got to really look at everybody who thinks all teenagers smoke, all teenagers use pot, all teenagers do. That's a lie. Okay. And this industry kind of manifests or builds on those lies. Okay. The buyers, here's a snapshot of buyers. Both males and females buy. The book 50 Shades of Grey, and then it turned into a whole bunch of movies, reminded women that they can have sexual fantasies too. And this, so it used to be that almost all of our buyers were men. Now it's more 70-30, 60-40 women buying, and women will buy for the experience or for the outing or for the thrill or for the risk, you know, just like guys will do it. So it's not about, ooh, this is all about one bad gender. We don't have such a thing. There's curiosity. They need to have a cash flow. And by cash flow, it's an extra 20 bucks in your pocket. And when you stop and think about it, most people could find an extra 10 or an extra 20 for an experience. And when you first come in and the buyer's offering these low amounts of money, of course, the pimp's going to say, here, you can have this person for that amount of money, to lure them in so that pretty soon they're blackmailed as a buyer into buying more and more and more expensive people. Okay. So you might have purchased this person for $10 the first time. The second time they were 20, the third time they're 50, the fourth time you're pushing 500. It's about, and the buyer doesn't have the opportunity to go, nope, can't afford, because by the time the buyer realizes the pimp has photographs of them doing illegal, immoral behavior, it's too late. And they take those pictures right away. And if they don't get a picture, they'll Photoshop it. It's all about manipulation. So anyhow, that's a snapshot of buyers. And if you think about this as pedophiles, it's a whole lot easier to buy this than it is to risk going and sitting at a playground and trying to lure somebody's child. Okay. These are people who are very good at their manipulation and their lying. We talk about the control tactics because people will say to me frequently, Ruth, if I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't show up. Okay, let's talk about that not showing up. I've already mentioned the branding, the burnings, the scarring, the markings, the cuttings, etc., that they will do if you disobey a direct order from your pimp or from one of the people that's marketing your pimp. But they also can do a couple other things. Most people have these smartphone thingies. They look like this, and it's supposed to do great things for you, I guess. But that smartphone can have any number of apps. There's probably 50 to 75 apps on the market that play directly into human trafficking. They might look like a picture. They might look like a calculator. They might look like TikTok. They might look like anything, but they're links into an industry that if you're not in the industry, it looks innocent. But if you're in the industry, you recognize it and you go, oh, here's somebody else being bought and sold. Phones can be spoofed. And by spoofing, I mean, they're turned into a walkie-talkie. So if I'm a pimp and I supply everybody in my ring a cell phone, I've already coded into it some apps so that I can listen to everything they say if this phone is in the room. The phone doesn't even have to be on, okay? The phone is a tool that can be used to manipulate and control. So that's why when we teach medical staff and we say, turn the cell phones off, we really mean put them in another room, leave them someplace else so that that person and you can have a private conversation, not a conversation with a phone in it. If that doesn't work, there's microchipping in the human body. The last victim that we worked with, we took out 9 microchips out of her, because just in case one was going to fail, I guess. And the microchip is exactly like what you'd put in your hound dog with the GPS tracking, so that you know if your dog follows its nose and ends up 3 miles away, you can, find your dog through this GPS tracking device. The tracking device costs about, $12, $12.99 on the internet. They're not expensive, and the needle's pretty big, but you can order them on the internet. You can microchip somebody, and as long as you're savvy with IT work, you can track them anywhere. The third way they track is in the biggest rings. They will mark the cars, or they'll put GPS systems in the cars. If it's not in the phone, it's not in the microchip, they'll put it in the car, and they will make sure that they track that car and where it is at all times, so that that person, if they're doing things in the wrong building or the wrong location, or they get called out because they're being bought and they don't show up, they can send drivers or goons or hitmen or whatever to go get that person and bring that person in for consequences, while they send somebody else out to go finish that transaction. But this person who disobeyed will be penalized. So there's fear, there's pain, there's threats. It's all part of this game. Videotaping, photographing, photoshops, it's all part of that. As soon as they get you in vulnerable positions, they own you, because what they'll do is threaten to tell the people you know and love about you. Whether it's truth or not, doesn't matter, because this whole industry is built on lies. They look for these things as vulnerabilities. And just so you see, every single one of us, we look just like buyers. So people on the inside of the industry, they're scared of us just like they're scared of everybody else. Okay. Every age, think about brain, the younger you are, the easier you are to manipulate into some of this, or the older you are, the easier you might be to manipulate into this. And again, people will buy, this is about sexual deviances. People will buy what they don't have at home so they can experiment or play. If you identify on the LGBTQAI spectrum, okay, you're worth double the money. Pregnant people are worth double the money. I guess these populations, people who are very, very large, okay, like 450 pounds and above, that's where you get these weird TV shows like My 600-Pound Life. And I don't know if any of you have cable, but there's a market for that. And so we've got people, they're worth double the money. People in certain education levels, when they go to do harvest the eggs or harvest the sperm, if they qualify in the STEM programs, they're good at science, math, technology, get it? Their sperm and their eggs are sold for more money. So when they go to find the people that they're going to harvest sperm and eggs from, they're looking for those really good students, or the honor roll, or schools are really good about publishing stuff like that. So they know exactly who to go online and target to try and blackmail, so that they can milk that person for part of this industry. Again, selling it in. Mental health, I've already mentioned. Poverty, homelessness, to help pay the bills. Look, for every transaction you do, you get 10%, I get 90. Well, then the person has to do more and more and more transactions in their off time. Okay, violence, threats, fear. There are some, we call them death flicks. There are some victims that I've interviewed, over 200 people in regards to this, that will tell you they have witnessed people being killed, and it's videotaped, and then they sell the videotape as a death flick on the dark markets. Can I prove it? I know they're out there. Can the officers that I train and talk to say, yep, they're out there, Ruth, but we can't prove where it is, who it is, where, you know what I mean? To go get the people responsible. Again, because officers have to verify and validate. They can't just go, based on somebody's word, it's that guy, so to speak. And then, of course, if you get into immigration, you've got a whole nother ball of wax, because then you have people where English is not their first language. They get lost in the language translations. They don't know their rights. They don't know what we can and can't do. And so they're super duper duper vulnerable for a long, long time. And just because it's on the news right now, and I know you guys are pretty savvy, okay? There is a whole bunch of children potentially on our border that got stopped trying to cross over. Pimps knew they could go down and get them, call them things like, hey, I live in Iowa and I've got a farm and I could use I'll give them room and board and they can work my farm. And they were able to get, 15 or 20 passenger vans and pick up that many kids and bring them up. And it wasn't until the people on the border said, excuse me, Mr. President, make some rules about this, that then some rules got made, and now you can only take 3 or 4 at a time. So they just send more pimps to go get them. That's how they get brought in. You see what I'm saying? And these kids are so vulnerable because they think they're going to be promised food, room and board, and an honest day's work and an honest wage. They're lucky if they get to go to school. Okay. Iowa has some of the biggest labor trafficking cases in our nation, and the sex trafficking, if it's women or children, it's labor and sex trafficking together. If it's adult men, you get labor trafficking, and the adult men are serviced by the women and the children. They're added for the bonus. So again, all of these are linked together pretty tightly. And I say to people, if you know where those sketchy drug houses are, you know where the human trafficking houses are. But people think those are only in the poor neighborhoods. You're wrong. They're in the mansions. If you're making $32,000 a week on average, you can buy some big campers, big houses, you know, and think about the more bedrooms, the more spaces you have, the more people you can manipulate for those parties that you host or that you invite people over to. This is a buyer-driven market. Anything the buyer wants, the pimp is a good pimp, is able to say, you bet, I have that. And they flip their catalog and they look up whatever the buyer ordered and they say, when and where would you like me to send this person? That's how it operates, okay? Victims are all ages. You might see them as pretty anxious. They might be using drugs, maybe by choice so that they can cope, maybe not by choice so that they, one of my girls, she was a stripper and her husband was the one pimping her out. They had 2 children. And if she stripped 4 nights a month, she could make their house payment and then he didn't have to. Okay. So he made her strip and he provided her drugs in order to get up on the stage. And she said, I couldn't do it without the drugs. I couldn't get up and take my clothes off. Do you see what I'm saying? So people that think that this industry is free, or that they go to establishments like that and they think, oh, these people are happy doing this. They are wrong. You're lying to you. You know what I mean? And we try and tell people nobody in the sex industry is free, because no pimp is going to let anybody work on their turf without taking a cut. Okay. So self-harm, when you have girls and boys that are into self-harm, or you have the mental health issues, somebody better be talking to them about what's going on, who's manipulating them, who's threatening them, or who's trying to, because again, they'll turn to that information. And when these people come for help, and every victim I've ever interviewed has said, Ruth, I told people, I told teachers, I told staff, I told people, nobody did anything because we couldn't validate, verify, etc. Everybody just kind of went, and then left it alone. Talk to my hand. Nobody wants to get involved. So it's perceived that these are troubled kids, but let me tell you guys, some of the biggest sellers in the industry, we had a couple that was arrested in the Des Moines area. Both of them had law degrees. Both of them were lawyers in the state of Iowa, and they were trafficking each other, going out and being trafficked out in the Las Vegas area with law degrees. So this isn't just for the uneducated, okay? You got to see the game. Some people look at it and say, these are just acting out people that are taking risks. They don't want to fit into the real world. And I'm thinking, because they don't understand the real world. They think the real world operates like sex rings. And so they're constantly fighting in their world for what they think is truth, that is really not truth at all. Like for most of us, truth is a house, a family, a job, an education, respectability, responsibility, that kind of stuff. They don't see that as real life. They see that as an illusion, because the people they think have real lives are buying them. So they see them as users that buy them, so that they devalue those of us that are helping, because they just can't see the truth, because they don't know what it is. Okay. Force, fraud, and coercion. Those are some of the things used to manipulate. So just a snapshot there of what that looks like. And you got to see it as a game. You can set this up. People will say the trucking industry. Yeah, there's a lot of human trafficking in the trucking industry, but there is on campground. There is at the Iowa State Fair, and there's campgrounds. There's real estate. It's in every small town. It's in every big town. This is business. This is money. So, you know, if you can set up a gas station, if you can set up a nail parlor, if you can set up a gift shop, you know, you can set up human trafficking. These are businesses. They're sold right in place. They are not missing because Iowans don't like it when people go missing. So they're sold in place. They're marketed when they're not at work, when they're not at school, when they're not at college, when they're, you know, I have one girl that says every time she left her college, she had to be sold all the way to her home. She'd get to have Christmas at home and be sold all the way back, and dates would be set up for her all the way to and from so that she would have the privilege of seeing her family for the holidays. Okay, it's that kind of thinking. She wasn't bought and sold every day. She was bought and sold on strategic days that it worked into her life. She was free and people wouldn't recognize that she was being bought and sold. Okay, gifts and things like that, their lives are provided for. They are not dressed in lingerie all the time. They look like you and I. They dress like you and I because, again, they're being bought and sold in Iowa. So you have to fit into the crowd you're being bought and sold by. Okay. And so when you stop and think about the roles that people play, we're advocates and we educate. Prevention is pennies on the dollar. Doing this, I'm a free presentation doing this to get people talking and thinking about it. And then looking at their own communities, looking at the houses around them, looking at people's behavior. And instead of saying, that's really weird, say, why are they doing that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Do they know better? Are there other opportunities? Can we make other opportunities for our young adults and our kids? Guys, I was training down at a hospital in Des Moines, and two of the nursing staff came up to me and they said, we tell our husbands that we have to go, we go grocery shopping and to a movie every Friday night. And they looked at each other and said, we've never seen a movie together and we don't come home with groceries. They're both being manipulated. They are married, they have children, but because somebody is blackmailing them, they're going. And the husbands are none the wiser. Get it? This is about manipulation and lying. So we provide people with this information. If you see immediate danger, it's of course 911, and you tell them what you see. If you see things that make you go, that doesn't look right, then you report the 888-3737-888 number and you say, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I overheard, blah, blah, blah. You don't even have to give your name. Okay, just tell them. That information goes into Washington, D.C. and right straight back into our AG's office and our task force for missing and exploited children, because Iowa doesn't have a human trafficking task force because we don't have enough cases of human trafficking to have a task force. So we use the missing and exploited children to do all of these investigations if we're lucky enough to do investigations. And of course, if you have a victim or somebody come forward and say to you, I need help, the 800-700-1650 number there is staffed by people who can help that victim talk about, get to safety, get to housing, get to somebody like me that's going to hide them if possible until we can get them to safety. And that's what we do. Now, I'm sure that didn't feel really good. That was pretty heavy for a Monday at noon. You know, but I want you to understand that I have survivors in Jefferson. I am working with young people in the Jefferson area. Your school system is aware of people who have been trafficked or who are living the lifestyle that makes people in your school system, okay, nervous that trafficking might be happening. And as soon as those faculty, which are very, very intuitive and bright people, as soon as they try and intervene, those kids disappear or don't get brought back to school, et cetera, et cetera. I just want you to know people are aware and doing what they can do. And the best thing that I think people can do is the awareness model. It is pennies on the dollar to help people be aware compared to restoration, which takes, you know, thousands of dollars and takes years to help restore somebody who comes out of this industry. So my biggest ask at the end of these presentations is to say, please, please, please be the involved, protective, observant people out in the community, when you're out there, you be looking around, make sure things look right. If the business says closed, why are there cars around it? If the business is closed in the evening, why are there 15 cars at the back of the business? You know, just be, I hate to say nosy neighbors, because that's not what I'm after, but that is what I'm after. I'm after people who look around, pay attention, and go, that doesn't look right. I need to learn more about what goes on there, because if you're seeing people bought and sold, brought in and out of there, okay, you might be the one that alerts the officers and says, watch this, just watch it. That's all I want you to do. And let them, because, you know, people that go into law enforcement are heroes. They have hero hearts. Help them just by being observant, telling them where to watch and when to watch, and then let them go do their jobs. That's probably the best we can do. Questions for me? You're muted, so you got to unmute yourself to talk to me.
Do we have any idea of how large a number, a percentage of this problem nationwide? And number two, why are we so adamant not to put PSA ads on TV, children's programs, adult education? I really had very little idea that it was this widespread.
It's very widespread. Most people do not want to talk about it because it doesn't make you feel good. It's a stress topic. It scares people. It scares kids. I maintain that that's ignorance, because the kids that are involved, when they find out that not every family does this, they want out. Do you see what I mean? And that's one of the things. It's like, they don't know that every home isn't involved doing this same thing. So if you would put some PSAs out there, et cetera, that'd be great. Most of the time people will say, Ruth, it stresses me out. Please don't talk about it. I would tell you, I hear that more than anything. As for percentages and numbers, if I put any betting on it, I heard you guys talking about betting. If I bet on anything, I'll lay you money that human trafficking makes more money in this country than drugs do. Where you have drugs, you have human trafficking. They're married, because the human body is what's bought and sold to move the drug from Mexico to Canada to Mexico. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to have the money to move it. So you put a guy and a gal and some kids in a car, and then you hide the drugs in the car, and then you move those drugs through communities because they look like a family and people aren't suspicious of that. But that's the product line. You can only sell drugs a few times before you've used up your supply. You can sell a human body, you know, till it's diseased, etc. And these great big sex rings, they own people like insurance agents, so that when they have a fleet of cars that they own, they're getting the best rates. They own doctors to keep the product, those people they're selling, drug-free, chemical-free, disease-free, etc. They own businesses to launder their money through. They own churches, they own people. And it's just it's this web of darkness that's infiltrated into the rest. They go to places that are public or whatever, and they listen to people saying things like, I'm stressed out at home. Well, I could offer you something for that stress. Well, come with me. I've got a party going on. And then somebody goes to this party, and then they're photographed at the party. And then pretty soon the photograph is photoshopped, and it looks like they went to a party in this background, and then they've got this blackmail attached to their name, etc. And they say, you're a school teacher, I'm going to ruin your life by sharing these pictures, or you're a law enforcement. Do you see what I'm saying? So again, it's all about how you can manipulate people in the first time. Once you get them once, you've got what you need to just keep that cycle going. It ruins marriages. It ruins, people ask me about the divorce rate and all of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because people will say, I'm done buying, I'm done. Well, you can say that until the pimp says, you haven't bought from me for a while, so you owe me this amount of money. And that marriage goes from, we had trust, to, oops, we don't really. You see what I mean? There's just a lot of it. Other questions?
Is this is this an argument for the legalization and regulation of prostitution?
I would not say that because I don't believe there's very much prostitution left. I do not believe that I have yet to have any victim come forward and say, I get to keep the majority of my money. If anything, they get 10%, 5%. I've got some victims currently being trafficked at tailgates, maybe at some major college campuses in central Iowa, you know, and people are go Hawks, go Clones. Yeah, these people are being trafficked in campers at tailgates. They're paid $5,000 for the weekend, but the pimps pocketing about $10,000 off of each person they're selling. That's how busy the campers are.
That's
Okay.
well, but that's not the regulation part of it. I'm saying that it, you know, they do it in Amsterdam, they do it in the Bunny Ranch in Nevada. It's regulated. The providers are regularly screened and tested. Yeah, I'm being the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, if you could keep people and they could have free choice and they're all adults before they come in, I probably wouldn't stand in the way of any adults. I have a huge problem when it's children, but because I don't think they get, I mean, that 3-month-old, I'm sorry, she was not born and said, gosh, today I want to have sex with people I don't know and I didn't choose. I know she didn't say it.
Ruth, because of your advocacy, are you under any threat to your well-being?
Always, yes, always. And we
Wow.
made that decision as a family. So my kids and I and the kids that weren't involved, we talked about it long and hard before we did this. And I have irritated a huge number of people that, you know, my phone, I don't answer my phone unless it's somebody that I know or they text me first. I do a lot of protection stuff. Yeah. But our whole family does. I mean, because we know that, you know, we made the agreement to educate Iowans as best as we can. And I've been blessed with all these stories because my kids knew people and people will get to me and say, you can use my story for education. I don't want to make any money off of it, blah, 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 but here's my story. And you know, that's a gift. So it's information. And guys, again, don't let something like this be a hit and done. Go do some of your own research. The best sites that I think have information on human trafficking for facts and percentages and numbers and even Iowa stuff are on, it's called polarisproject.org or the National Council for Missing and Exploited Children.org. So it's in NECMEC. Okay, just that's what it stands for. And again, they're federally funded. This is their job. They train and teach. They've got hundreds of resources and documents. They're excellent, excellent resources. And if you ever need me to do a big presentation or a small, you know, I'm free. Sometimes people will help me with some gas money or something like that. And that's great. But otherwise, I talk to churches and civic organizations and all kinds of people. Protective, observant parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and nieces, and you got it. They're the best thing ever. But I thank you for inviting me to do this presentation. And if there's, Jackie, did you have a question? Go ahead.
I do. Am I muted?
Nope, I can hear you.
Okay. I know this is a priority of our incoming district governor. And I'm wondering what plans are, I know George is involved, and what plans are you formulating for the district for the coming year? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I don't, and I'm on the board at the, you know, Network Against Human Trafficking, but I don't know what exact plans are coming out with the Rotary.
okay. Well,
But if there's
There will
anything
be.
I can do to help, boy, I'm with you. I'm not a member, but I could become a member if I could help.
That'd be great.
So, but I know my time is up, guys. It's almost 1. And so I'm sorry for taking that. So Jonathan, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You bet.